Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
to
to
the
the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right. Okay. Roll call. So Maya's here. She said she wasn't going to talk, but Maya's here.
Maya Lingrich.
Okay. Meg Quinn. Elizabeth Ricketson. And then we do have a fifth one on the way, but he's going to be a few minutes late. Okay, so first item of business is that we have sustainability partners here on the Zoom call. And what we had kind of wanted you to talk about was, you know, we at our last meeting, we had selected 4 developers / vendors to kind of consider going forward with. And I think 2 of them you had already kind of vetted, but we had maybe put 2 more in your mix. So we kind of wanted to understand the vetting process and how long that takes. And if you've had an opportunity to look at them already, that, you know, whatever you want to share with us related to that process would be great. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I'll do a quick introduction of myself and our team. So I'm Ryan Mast. I'm the state lead for New Mexico for Sustainability Partners, heading up all of our project development activities here. Joining me tonight, I have Brian Figgenshow from our team, who helps us in the vendor vetting process and underwriting process for our projects. Then I also have Connor Goss, who is the infrastructure specialist assigned to support all of our projects here in New Mexico. He's been working here in New Mexico. He's in Louisiana, but been working here in New Mexico for a few years now, working the other projects in Angel Fire, actually, so he's very familiar with the village, and he supports essentially on the project implementation side. So has been involved in this project for about a year now with me as we started to scope out potential solutions for the village. You know, our vetting process for vendors really starts with with what is the need. So it's really a conversation beginning with what is our customer, in this case the village, seeking, and do we have existing vendor relationships, or is there other products out there that we can help to review to see if that might present a specific solution for the village. So on the workforce housing topic, as it was brought up to us last year in January from the city manager or the village manager and the mayor, we've gone through and worked and engaged with a number of different vendors from your list, which actually started with Modular Solutions, to see what they might be able to present in terms of an offsite construction solution for that, and got some initial information from them. Our vetting process also includes actually going and visiting their factories to understand their construction processes, to understand the materials that they're using, to know the overall durability of the product, to understand does it meet the specific specs that are needed for certain terrain or geography. So for an area like Village or Angel Fire, we really wanted to make sure that the product would be able to meet snow loads on the roofing, that it would be able to address energy efficiency needs in cold weather, even such things as what are transportation costs associated with that, what are installation costs and needs for that to be. We've gone on to vet a number of different modular and manufacture home vendors, some that I had shared with Rocky when they were doing the initial questions to go out, just to continue to reach out to them. We did a fair amount of vetting also with Champion Homes, visited their factory. Connor was actually on that to visit their site. So those are the 2 that we've been to their factory. We've been invited now to Clayton Homes to visit. They have one of their manufacturing locations here in Albuquerque, but for the units that we might be envisioning for Angel Fire, that's actually located out in Fort Worth. So Connor's currently scheduling a time to go out with our team to go visit that. Same thing, to understand the manufacturing process. What's their QA/QC process on the units? what are the options for the materials, what does maintenance look like on the units, everything you would think about in terms of quality assurance and meeting the specs for the customer. The one on the list that was provided to us, which was down in Roswell, I had spoken to the owner of the company. He sent me over some spec sheets on the different units and that they do have available. We haven't scheduled anything to follow up with them. I think a question we might have for the committee is that something that we'd still like us to consider. Certainly willing to go through and engage with them to do the same process on vendor vetting with them. But our understanding is their ability, their size might be a little small, even if they do have another unit, like their ability to deliver that number of units might be limited. But that's an open question. I certainly have contacts there, have been invited down there to continue with that, but just wanted to check that tonight to see if that was also something that you wanted us to look at as terms as an option.
So real quick, you mentioned modular solutions. I'm trying to remember if that was something that we looked at last week.
Yes,
Which
it
one, what is
was,
that?
it was one of the 4 that we chose.
Modular solutions we chose,
Champion, Clayton, JD Homes, and Modular Solutions.
Champion, Clayton. I had JW Homes, Builtwise.
Yeah,
Zachary for Clayton Homes and Champion Homes, and I don't remember the modular solution ones. I'm sorry, I don't. I don't even see it in our spreadsheet. So I'm confused by that one. I mean, it's okay that you vetted them. I'm just curious why I don't have them in our spreadsheet.
I think that Rocky brought the paperwork to the meeting.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then we considered them?
Right, you're right, okay, you're right, I remember now, okay. And then as far as the one for Roswell, I know that, because it's a local company in New Mexico, and they seem to have some decent units that would work, and they're, maybe we save some cost on, but if you're concerned about, that would be part of your vetting, is if you're really concerned about their ability to deliver the number of units, we would definitely want to hear that as part of your vetting. And, if that makes us eliminate them, then because it is important for us to get the delivered on time, delivered and put some housing up. We have a goal of October. So I think that's important. And also you mentioned the Clayton Homes. So the one I know that Clayton Homes it's a nationwide thing. The person that had submitted their response was out of Albuquerque, but you mentioned, what did you mention? Somewhere out of Texas?
Factories.
Yeah, they have factories across the country, and so we've actually been engaged with them, and they reached out to us, and so we've got some cut sheets on some of the units. The ones that seem to fit the bill for at least in our previous conversations with the village in terms of the specifications you were looking for, they were thinking that would likely be in a Fort Worth facility. So, I mean, most of these companies would have similar processes at each of their factories. But if we had the option to go to the one where the actual units that we would be engaging with them on are produced, that would be our preference. And so, that was just based off the feedback and engagement with them, is that would be the more likely the area where they would be coming from. We can certainly, quickly sneak over. I could quickly sneak over to the Albuquerque facility here to see their general processes, but we'd really prefer to see the actual units and where they're actually designed, just to confirm all of that.
Okay. And y'all are comfortable with Clayton, that even, though it would be the factory in Fort Worth that might be putting it together, they would coordinate with Albuquerque and with y'all and make sure that we've got the right insulation, we've got the right roof slopes, we've got all those things that are going to be concerns.
That's a great question, and yes, absolutely. I mean, on the specs and the specifications, that's actually right where we're at right now in terms of questions. Is like we want to know down to like what type of lumber are you using when you put
Yeah.
these together. And so that's the level of detail that we really go into. We do have the standard cut sheets on the different units that they're proposing. But in addition to that, we want to do another layer and pull back the curtain a little bit more to see what that looks like. Where there's opportunity for us to get more durable materials, we're going to advocate for that. And then I think really important, like the list of questions that Rocky sent over that you guys have been, really great about putting together in terms of the next level of questions. That's also our concern, right? We need to ensure that it meets all of those specifications, including if it's just aesthetic preferences. For us, we're going to try to get more durable type of materials wherever we can to increase the useful life of those as well. And then the long term, and that would also improve the long-term performance. The energy efficiency question has come up now too. And so that's been one of the key questions that we've come back. And then finally, the one thing that I did not see on the list that was provided over to us, but we're digging into now, and we've got some information, but we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper, which is on warranties. What is a warranty? Your standard manufacturer warranty is great, but what we're looking at is extended warranties, whether that's offered through the manufacturer themselves or a third party, because we're really going to want to protect these financially as long as we can.
Okay.
I'll add there too, Ryan, that Clayton does have a program to provide up to a 10-year extended warranty for structural defects. It's advertised on their website, but it's only through certain manufacturing facilities. So that's something we're going to want to dig into heavily as well. Things like the vapor barrier testing that should be done both in the factory and on site, so that we make sure we've got a sealed envelope day one. I've got a whole series of additional questions, as does Connor, that we'll run through with them in our next meeting.
Great.
Josh is joining us too. Lori, yes?
I only saw the square footage quote on Clayton. I couldn't find it on the other houses. Does anybody have that? And my second question, Ryan, is have you ever used more than one vendor for a project?
Yeah, it's quite common for us to do. And in fact, that's one of the other things for this that we'll look at in terms of just delivering what the need is and meeting the need. Even for this unit, I mean, for efficiency, we'd want to go with one vendor for both cost efficiency and construction efficiency on the manufacturing of it. But we've already started to dig into whether they're going to be providing the support for transportation installation, or do we use a third party? I think ideally we're going to be looking at ability to deliver, what the cost is associated with that. I think Connor, it sounds like it might be cheaper if we go with a third party on the transportation. Is that correct? And certainly we'd want to maybe consider a local installer.
Right. As far as the transportation, from what I've gathered so far, it's looking like it would be cheaper going with a third party company to get that done. But from what I also understand, the companies that manufacture the homes can provide the transportation, and it might be, we're just gonna have to weigh the pros and cons of, is it more reliable to go through the original manufacturers, get it transported as well? So it's all of those factors looking into it, but yes, you're correct about the third party shipping.
Okay. So, we're going to talk here in a little bit about the mix that we think we need in terms of 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. But the biggest question I have, because we want to stay on this tight schedule, is in order for you to go to the Roswell company and to look at these Clayton homes and come back with some recommended units, what kind of timeline can we expect, or some information from you on that? Is it next week? Is it 2 weeks from now? So that we can kind of then make recommendations to the council on the specific models. And we definitely want to hear what your recommendations are, but we'd like a couple options too. So.
Yeah, I think, that's a great question in terms of feedback from us. We've done a fair amount of vetting on the modular solutions. They have a good product, and it can be a unique use case for certain things. I do believe they probably would be able to deliver the number of units, but their price point, I think, is going to exceed what the affordability index, at least for our understanding. We modeled that one first from a cost perspective, and it came in 30 to 40% higher than the other sort of more manufactured type units that we were looking at with Champion and Clayton. And so the JW Homes, I've certainly, I can call down there to Chance tomorrow and just get a sense of his ability to deliver the number of units, et cetera, on that portion of it, and just review what the specs are, and see where that's at. On Clayton and Champion, I mean, we're already deeply engaged in these two companies. Like on Champion, we've done our due diligence already on it. We know basically what product what they can offer. Clayton, we're midstream on that, but we can accelerate that pretty quickly and then be able to. I mean, I think for them, you're getting down to more the minutia of the details, the larger components or larger questions we have. They're very relatable, very similar. I think we're going to be looking, configuration things, components like, do they include heat? Do they not? A big one to consider, and I know this is a big deal up in Angel Fire, especially for from an affordability aspect, is what's the energy efficiency index for both of these? What are we looking at? Like, because it doesn't, in our mind, make sense to go with a cheaper unit that costs $400 or $500 a month to heat. It's just that you lose it. The affordability on that backside. So, I think from that perspective, we can provide a high level of confidence and recommendations probably by next week. Connor, Brian.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think that's pretty accurate. Like you said, Brian and I have been digging in on Clayton quite a bit. They have a lot of our materials as far as the questionnaires, things like that, the data centers that we like to get. They have their marching orders to get to us for review. Hopefully we'll get it before the weekend. But as far as visiting the site, especially the Dallas site that he was mentioning, which is actually in Fort Worth, but that if that would be something that I'm tasked with, which will be coming up soon, that's a 1-day thing. That's a there and back in 1 day. So that's not a week-long situation.
And I would just add that, aside from early recommendations, our best case scenario would be going out and visiting maybe a community that's been there for 10 to 15 years with a similar unit, a similar structure. How is that chassis aging? How are those materials aging in the field where you've got, snow, an environment that looks like Angel Fires? If we can get there at some point before we have a final addendum and ready to go to NTP, that would be preferable for us to be able to do a complete sign off on how things are in the real world.
Jake, you had.
So I was going to ask the question a slightly different way. So obviously they're going to be engaged in vetting, some of which they've already done, some of which is still to be done. So the question I think we should ask is, if we want housing in October,
Right.
based on what they're seeing now from these 4 vendors, one of which is going to be on the higher end, one of which there's some concern as far as their ability to deliver this year, and then the other 2 are kind of in a neck and neck horse race. When would we as a village, not just this committee, need to be issuing an order
Right.
to actually stand a chance at getting housing implemented this October? And then kind of back into when we need to have meetings as this committee, when the council needs to have meetings, because there's going to be several steps after you guys get a look at it before we can actually, start issuing contracts. So is there a feel from the group we have on right now of what that kind of timing question needs to look like?
You mean to put the orders in to get them by October?
Correct. So
Up and.
Are you asking us or them? You're asking.
I'm asking the folks from Sustainability Partners just based on.
Oh, I'm
what
sorry.
they're
I wasn't sure who you were looking at because you look behind your court. I saw you looking behind yourself, which means it wasn't me. I was like, great, I'm not on the hot seat for that one.
Yeah, you're up here on the wall for me. So
okay, got it. Yeah, I think we do have a pretty good sense on that. I mean, I think for us, realistically, we'd like to have what we consider a service addendum, which isn't a financial commitment, but just like, this is what we want, number of units and roughly the manufacturer by the end of the month, end of March, because then that gives us time to finalize all the vetting and getting that selected vendor under contract, It also gets us the time to secure the capital and move everything. Now we can do that at an accelerated pace, but we do all of those steps to then be able to issue a PO to the vendor so that construction can begin. The statement from the folks that we spoke with at Clayton and Champion is they can likely have the first units rolling off the line 6 to 8 weeks after PO is issued. Now, that doesn't mean all 30 are done, but that means that though, that's getting things going. And that, so if we give that length 2 months, that means over the summer we can start realistically having some units available. The other timing question that we're sensitive to, and I'm sure that this committee is as well, which is coordinating that with when the sites are actually the site work is done and prepared and able to accept the units. And that's going to be it's going to be a very delicate dance that we're going to work with. I've already had very lengthy conversations internally, especially with Connor, on the options for that. But I think that would be sort of the time frame for us in terms of like go button gets hit end of March, and then we kind of build in and start prepping for how long, so when we can get the PO in. Then from there, what we would do is my recommendation would be is let's start figuring out our contingency plan for a variety of different scenarios, and really try to make sure that we're matching schedules as best we can and coordinating between both when the site work is done and when the units are available. This goes back to Connor's early comment about like, it might be really great to go with a third-party transport company, but if it's more efficient, we can meet that timeline by just using their own, that might be the option, right? So if the goal is, the ultimate goal is delivery of units by October, that's where we're going to have to really be digging into the details.
So Rocky, where on that schedule does we see kind of the site ready to start accepting units? Can you tell, or?
Well, it's an estimate right now. We're still waiting for an approval from the New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority, resulting from the environmental assessment and the biological assessment. If we get that in the next couple of weeks, theoretically, we can start in the middle of March, breaking ground over there.
Okay.
But we're dependent on that first.
Okay. And then,
We can't touch that soil until
Sure.
those are done.
and then breaking ground up to a point where a spot is ready, or
No,
we don't know that yet.
no, I think the initial is gonna be the utilities, water, sewage, all those things. So, and it's still in engineering.
Okay,
So, but the engineers will have it. I think all that's gonna fall into place. Quite frankly, I don't see. I think that the site work could be done as soon as July or August.
okay,
And quite frankly, October is just kind of the latest that we want to have homes delivered, because
okay,
we start running into weather
Weather.
issues, when we get beyond that.
so July, say like July, mid-July or something like that, backing up would be
I would say
mid-May,
by mid-August, September,
okay,
that we'll be ready to accept delivery.
okay.
Uh,
That
So
was
we
why, that was why I asked if you use more than one vendor sometimes.
Yeah. And then, so that would put us at like 6 to 8 weeks for the PO would be somewhere around May. June, July, yeah, or sometime in May, for sure to get that, but if we,
So we're definitely looking, so we're gonna be doing this work in-house. We're not gonna put it out to RFP.
okay,
For several reasons. But, what I can tell you is, if you can have houses, when you tell us you're gonna have houses here, we'll have it ready.
okay, okay.
So if we need to order houses in May for an October delivery.
Or for a, May would be for an August delivery,
Yeah, so I mean, June, I would say September, October.
okay, okay,
But I like having deadlines,
sure,
to give others, because. So
okay,
we've got houses showing up September 15th.
Yeah.
We better have it ready.
okay,
So,
sure,
so I think there's a good level of comfort with what Sustainability Partners has done so far.
right,
And we're gonna, ask them to go forward and vet. the questions left remaining are gonna be the next agenda item, right?
Right.
How many ones, twos, and threes? Some of that is gonna be based on their pricing feedback. They may come back to us and say, actually, based on this vendor, here's the better mix. Based on this vendor, here's the better mix.
Mhm.
That is also then gonna flow into, as we're picking different size units, the civil engineering is gonna have to get tweaked because they're just physically different
Right.
sizes. So there's a lot of pieces that are connected to one another here.
Right.
But I'm gonna apologize to you guys, like I have several times before. We're here, we're in the middle of this project, we're gonna have to meet pretty regularly to tick these boxes, but it's all headed towards housing in 2025, so.
Right.
If you guys are comfortable kind of turning them loose, do we have any other questions that we want to add for them or ask for them? Because we're all curious to kind of see Matt's summary of Manager
Yeah,
Weir's
sure.
stuff, and that's gonna be a big driver.
Yes.
No,
Did you have any questions? I think Maya, I mean, if you have any questions, just let us know. I know she's got a pretty bad cold, so she.
That's fine, and I'm sure the folks at Sustainability Partners, they want to see this survey data
Right,
too, because
right.
it's what they're gonna be asking these vendors for.
Rocky, anything from you?
No,
Okay. Brett? No? Okay. All right. Well, so yeah, I think it's good, especially if we can get some more information next week. We'll target another call next week. And yeah, so we'll look at calendars towards the end of the meeting. But in the meantime, yeah, let's move on to our next.
I will say this as a consideration as a final point. I don't mean to delay things here, but just, you know, especially because this is, you know, we're kind of looking at this as phase one, and I know you're trying to get the right composition of 3 2s and 2 2s and 1. Having one type is going to speed everything up. This is the unit. This is what we're going with, not multiple different specs, layouts, sizes, etc. Especially from a, I mean, I know cost consideration is big, but actually we can negotiate higher discounts if they don't have to change configurations, right? Because then it's like it's all the same unit. Once you reach about 20 units, you can start to then we can start to then negotiate discounts because they're just it's literally just a factory turning off the same thing over and over and over again. And it, from a simplicity of maintenance, from a simplicity of materials, from a simplicity of everything, is going to speed everything up. So something to consider when you're thinking about a very say constrained or abbreviated time frame is like simplicity is going to be really beneficial. So I'll just leave it there.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so I don't have my computer hooked up to that, but I mean, we can share or I can just read off stuff. It doesn't, whatever you guys want me to do.
Are you connected to our Vibe? Could you drop it to Ileana and let her share
Yeah.
screen with the group?
Yeah. Let me forward this to you and I'll explain which ones to.
So while he's doing that, this is gonna be the summary of our internal village survey that we gave to Manager Weir, and he's gone back, what, 2 or 3 times now, I think, trying to get as many responses as we can. So we're looking at this as these will be our actual first choice tenants. Village employees are gonna get first pick of these rentals. So we wanted to see what their request came back as. Because, I mean, we could guess at this, but we might as well ask the people who are gonna end up living in these, which directions they would prefer, so. Let's give us a minute here technically to get this over to the right person who can share screen and
Let me
everyone
come
will
over
be able
and
to
show you
see
which
it.
one. We're gonna look at 2 different surveys.
All right.
We'll look at the ones that's the.
it's not installed on that computer.
Mm-mm.
You don't have Outlook on there.
No,
You need Outlook, I sent it to your. Can
Because
you-
it's a generic computer set up for,
I
it's
see.
not set up for a person.
Okay,
Well, if we can't share it, then let's just read off the,
Okay.
and let's try to stick to just the bedrooms.
Sure.
I know we asked a lot of other questions, but it's the most pressing topic.
okay,
so Elizabeth, you can't connect to
I
the
was gonna
Zoom.
say, could you join the meeting?
I could try, let me
Yeah.
know.
Join me.
And
Sure.
without
That'd be
wasting a bunch of
You
time,
log into Zoom from your computer
okay,
and then show it on your computer and then.
let's see if I can find it.
Rocky, I've got a question for you. Is the decision of the footprint of these units gonna hold Up the schedule on the back end, as far as the permitting or any of that, what you're working on?
I don't, it's too early to tell on that. We've got our site plan is still fluid. And so we have to kind of match up with what vendor we choose and how it fits in our footprint, how it's gonna adjust the site plan.
I would guess if the footprints are radically different, it would need
Yeah.
quite a bit of reworking, but I'm guessing from the spec sheets I've seen, they may be a foot or two difference here or there, but not hugely different shaped.
Something that we might wanna ask the engineers sooner than later is what. If we do a more conventional configuration in the layout. What
Yeah,
our max
it's a change.
to fit 30.
The square footage doesn't match what's being built.
Yeah, because if we go modular instead of manufactured, that's gonna be a big.
So I don't know what it's doing, but it's trying to connect.
You're on the Wi-Fi, right?
Yep, I think so, yep.
I kind of looked at the two surveys and I joined it. If you looked at first choice of what people were asking on both studies, 32 people wanted a 3-bedroom unit, 25 people wanted a 2-bedroom unit, 16 people wanted a 1-bedroom unit, and then there was a few that would take a studio.
Yeah, so I was, for some reason, I don't seem to be connecting to the meeting, so, I mean, I clicked on everything, but let me look one more time, but I'll go ahead, we'll just stick with reading them off. And, so there's two different surveys. One is the, just the village in general, and on here, there's 17 responses for 3 bedrooms, 17 responses for 2 bedrooms, and 10 for 1 bedrooms, and then we won't worry about the studio and other. So that's one set, and then let me pull up the other one real quick.
Excuse me,
Yes,
if I may, can I try joining in? Because I can also do the Zoom.
Yes, go ahead.
from Here.
yeah. I mean, you're not gonna see a whole lot different than
I
what.
can only do it from one computer.
Okay, so go back to my inbox. And then that was the regular village, and then the Village of Angel Fire employees, let me get back down to their responses real quick too.
15, 8, and 6.
Okay. Where are you seeing that at?
I looked earlier and on the questions and what was the first choice under 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom.
Okay, so you said 15, oh, I see it, 15 for 3-bedroom, 8 for 2-bedroom, and 6 for 1-bedroom. So,
Yes.
All of that together, that's like 25.
32, 28, 16, and 9.
So, we have a request for at least 32 3-bedrooms.
Yep.
Some of that may be a little bit overlap, like maybe somebody in the village also answered the other one. And then we have 25 2-bedroom requests and these are the two numbers added together, and 16 1-bedrooms. So if you were trying to focus on. Go ahead.
You have about 80% of the respondents are in 3 and 2 bedroom.
Right, exactly.
And I think it's fine for us to ask the questions to look at the single bedroom. My concern with the single bedrooms is I think the rents are gonna be tougher to pencil.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed if they pull a rabbit out of a hat and find one that makes sense,
Mhm.
great, let's look at it.
Mhm.
But I think the vast majority of them are gonna be in the 3 and 2 category, so
Right.
that's how we have the site laid out now is 3
Right.
bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, so I would say unless they come back with 1 bedrooms that we can actually afford to rent to someone.
Right,
Then-
exactly. Yeah, and if there was gonna be significant cost savings, or maybe it's only like a tiny touch more to do all 3 bedrooms, I suppose that would be the route to go. Because we have obviously enough demand for the site, but if we had to do some sort of split, then we could find some good economic mix there of the cost. That would be our suggestion, was we were, originally you were doing like 20%, 80% 2 bedrooms and 20% 3. I think we need to be more
50-50.
50-50 or 60-40 on the 3 bedrooms at least.
But that's gonna also depend on the costs as they come back. So,
Right.
so Ryan, does that kind of give you those numbers? Was that what you were expecting to see, or?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I don't know what I don't know the composition there to know that. I will just say, I mean, our perspective on it from what we've seen thus far is the cost difference from a per unit basis from between a 3.2 and a 2.2 is negligible. We'd have to go back to see what a single room might be. There may be a really cheap unit out there. That might make it look better, but again, for us, the bigger cost influencer is the quality of the materials, not the number of bedrooms or lack thereof. And so I think we'll go with whatever you want to. Now, I will also just remind, or just say that it's not remind, but like we're not dictating what you charge rent. Right. We'll do an availability charge on a per unit basis. But if you wanted to configure that differently, to just from an affordability aspect to make the numbers work, you're perfectly in line to do that. So if for us a per unit basis, a 3.2 costs the same as a 2.2, we're not going to charge you more for the 3.2. But if that is a more, if that has a higher market value for you in terms of the tenants, you have every right to do so, right? Like we're not going to tell you what you can and can't charge through that. So same thing you could look at from the inverse of that, which is the availability cost is the availability cost. If that wants to be a little bit lower for a studio or a 1 bedroom versus a 3.2 based off of market, you're capable of doing that. On the backside, the penciling to us is really not as big a factor. I don't know if that makes sense.
Will we be able to go through some real world numbers next week, or is that still a little further out from these vendors, you think?
I mean, we can do a lot of different scenarios, but it'd be great if we kind of knew which horse we're going with so that we can then spec that. You know what I mean? Like if we knew, like we can run all kinds of models. It's, we're really just plugging in this and that. And we can talk what those numbers look like based off of what we had before. But on a per unit basis, it really isn't going to shift that much. I mean, we have flexibility to make it look, similar to that. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
What I'm thinking is, what I'd like to see is when you come next week and after you've done the evaluation of these 2 or 3 companies and you say, okay, we want to we recommend these 2 or, then let's see some 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom models that they have and then the cost of those, because I don't know that we personally have any vested interest in saying, oh, it's got to look this way or that way. We want some reasonable floor plans that have those, that fit those 2 things. And then, so that way we can compare and say, okay, we really like Champion's, 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms versus Clayton or vice versa. I think that's kind of where we want to be. And, maybe it does come to 2 vendors, but it seems like you get better deals if you work with all 1 vendor. That's going to be that, what we'll want to have to be able to make a recommendation to the council.
Well, if I could suggest just from the modeling perspective, I suggest maybe we ask for 100% 3-bedroom model.
Okay.
A 50-50 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and that we simply ask for a 1-bedroom that we can at least see. Do you have one that will pencil? I mean, because we could spend weeks debating how many 1s, 2s, and 3s. Right. But the survey data says we have 36 respondents that said, yes, I would take a 3-bedroom.
Yeah.
And we're only talking about having 30 units on site. So if we end up with, if that is true, we're going to be 100% full as soon as all the 3 bedrooms are there.
Right.
Now, it may not be the blend, but it would at least give the folks at Sustainability Partners 2 different modeling scenarios to play with, to come back and present, unless anyone disagrees with that approach.
No, I like that idea. Go ahead.
Can I bring up something? I noticed in this, both surveys that over 50% of the people said they needed extra storage. So I looked on the Clayton website because I could see their prices per square foot at 75 to 106. So if you average out $90 a square foot, they have some 4.2s that you could keep one room as a storage unit. And they would be about 126,000. So if you don't want to have stuff all around all these houses, you're going to need to think about storage.
I think we'll definitely have our own set of covenants, for lack of a better term.
But if you look at the models, they hardly have any storage.
Well, I think that's gonna be, so I'll just make sure the committee, I think is, the focus of this committee is housing, not storage.
Right.
They can rent a storage unit if they need additional storage. I wanna make sure we just have adequate room for people first and foremost.
Right.
Not that I'm opposed to that. I think too, like if a 3-bedroom and they just need a 2 and they want extra storage, that's great. The point I was gonna make too is, I will say aesthetics are important to me. I wanted this to be function over form, but I'd also like it to look as nice as possible. And so I haven't, without seeing what the options are, but I'll just say that would weigh, in my mind, on a decision as well.
Right.
Just having something that we can all be proud of and that people can be proud to live in.
Yeah, that's a point. Yeah. So, and I think on both of those, on Clayton and Champion for sure, they have, there are some different finishes on the outside that we can, focus on at some point, but I thought they had some decent looking ones that weren't just a plain old box, so that'd be important to see that as well. And that's what I was thinking, if you could pick up, 1 or 2 models, but I do like the idea of the 100% 3 bedrooms, 50-50, and then maybe just see if there's a
Well, it would give
option, but
it would give us a way to evaluate an A/B scenario in 2 different settings.
right.
And since we are going to be on that compressed time crunch, I'm not saying we ultimately go with one of those, but at least it's a way for us to look at Clayton, Champion, and whomever else on an A/B comparison and say, okay,
Right.
here's what this housing cost is going to look like first. And then I think to BJ's point, because I think the first spec sheet we saw from Champion, it had a Galvalume roof on it.
Yeah.
Which for those of you that know, we actually have a code against Galvalume roofs.
Right.
So we're gonna have to tweak some of the aesthetics for, longevity and for look, but I think the quicker we can get to 2 realistic costing models, it's gonna help us get to that decision point even faster.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. So.
And I'll just say, and this is just my opinion, so to take it for what it's worth, but now that you've gone through this, in my mind, I'm thinking long-term, it'd be nice to kind of have a singles community and a family community. Because I don't think this is 30 units, and we know from the surveys isn't gonna solve all the problems.
Right, this is a first step.
Yes.
Yeah.
We gotta take the first step.
No, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
right, no, we agree.
This one is, and if we're gonna take a first step and we have a second community that's 1 and 2 bedrooms in the future, I mean, a 3-bedroom unit's gonna be a bigger draw for a family.
Right. I mean, the only issue there is that we have to be careful about calling neighborhoods certain things, because that goes against equal opportunity housing. So
That's a good point.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I understand what you're saying. If you had some other units available, it might, people might be more interested in that area versus another, but.
Was there any objection to doing the 100% and 50% modeling, just so as Ryan is tasking folks with that? Ryan, is there a better version of that you guys can think of, or 100% and 50/50s would be fine with you guys as well from just a evaluation perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from an evaluation perspective, we can do that. Based off of what we've been provided before, and I'll go back and look what we have from Clayton on this. Like, there's not a lot of price difference between a 3.2 and a 2.2. So it's going to look very similar to you. So I think for me, the bigger question is if we can get a 10 to 15% discount by using just one type of unit versus using two, that goes a long way in a project like this. And so that's really going to be where I'll be digging in a little bit more, which is, you know, what actual like cost efficiencies can we get in some of these other aspects of it. And, you know, I think the other thing that we want to look at and is actually kind of important for us to consider now on the pricing, which is on the materials. A longer, more durable material spec isn't really an aesthetic for us. It may actually drop the cost if we get something that's more robust. Because we're looking at amortizing based off a useful life. And so we're going to be looking into seeing if we can get stuff that lasts longer, is more durable out the gate for us. That'll actually help to benefit the project overall. And so, so yeah, I mean, does it make sense? Yeah, we can do that. We'll look at what those come back with. It might be that I come back with it's negligible between it. That's not the factor. The 1-bedroom unit we haven't explored a lot yet, so that's where I'll have to kind of go back and see if it makes sense. But we'll try to get at least an option for each of the manufacturers that we're considering.
Okay, that sounds good. So yeah, I mean, do we need to vote? Do we really need to vote on our recommendation?
I don't think so. I just giving them direction with what we're seeing. I think we all expect to see that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying anyone's made up their mind, but if we do come back and you can get 33 twos actually cheaper than you can get 15 2.2s and 15 3.2s from just an overall, you know, efficiency perspective, because to Manager Weir's point, this phase was never going to solve all of our problems. So
Right.
trying to make it the perfect phase,
Yeah.
we would rather have a really, really good phase and have it this year versus getting stuck in the minutia of making it perfect.
Okay.
I just wanted to, so just the kind of like initial layouts, how many like ish 3 bedrooms do we think the site would support?
So we've got, was it 32 that's on the current layout, or do I have that 30? There's 30 on the current layout right
Okay.
now.
But
Yeah.
the square footage is pretty small.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and well, and then
I
there
don't
may
have
be
the
some.
survey in front of me.
I'm sorry, Lori, what'd you say? I didn't mean to
I
cut you
don't
off.
have the survey in front of me, but it was laid out with 700 square feet for the 2.2s and 1,000 for the other,
Yeah,
with 3.2s. And what we're looking at is most of them are more square footage than that. So I don't think we're going to be able to fit 30.
but we also have the opportunity to rearrange this more traditionally, the layout a little more traditional as well, may allow for 2 things. One, may be able to fit a few more units or, you know, fit the bigger units. And secondly, give people some yard space as well. So if the covenants allow an extra shed, if they want to put a shed on it or a swing set or a fence for a dog, you know, that kind of thing. That we kind of want to make sure the layout supports that type of thing. So it can be like a neighborhood, you know?
Yeah, I guess what I was kind of getting at is that we may just with that property, if we just say, I mean, we're not making any decisions right now, but if we say, yeah, 3-bed, 1 type is great. If we did 30, whatever, 3 bedrooms, boom, we're there, and then you have some space like you're talking about. Anyway,
Well, and I think picking the specific units, the footprint of that unit, it matters to finalizing this
Correct.
footprint, this here. So yeah, we need to do that.
Yep.
Okay, so we have 7 minutes left, so a couple more minutes for any questions or comments, and then we need to move on to action items for the next meeting. So anything else from anyone?
I just have one last question that we'll have to dig in, and it will impact the pricing on this. Is there a preference, or has there been any decisions or discussions around the heating options for these units?
We've had several discussions internally about that. You know, one of the challenges is going to be if they do the mini splits, which all of you can kind of see here in the room, I think that's fine, but they would have to have auxiliary heat at this winter when any of those folks run that calculation, you're gonna need an electric strip heater, radiator or something. I think propane would probably be our preference from just a utilities cost to the tenant perspective, but it is gonna add a fair amount of first cost versus the all electric option. So I think we would like to see that considered, but no decision has been made there yet. We're gonna be looking for feedback from you guys on what your preferences are and what, potential different usages would be with those different heating options.
Did we ever look at any solar as in that first round when y'all did that initial?
Solar, just,
Just solar panels on the units?
no, I mean,
Okay.
you can, but it,
I mean, it adds cost, I don't know how much it adds.
right.
The one thing I would say is that to the people that were trying to lease these to, the cost of utilities is huge.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if their utility bill, generally, the most expensive is electric. If it's the same thing as their rent,
Yeah.
we just priced them out.
I think on one of the surveys, we had a specific question about of what the average utility is, and most of them answered somewhere between $0 and $200. So, if you think about that, that would be, we'd want to be careful with not getting about that. So the energy efficiency is going to be important because, I don't know how many people have under $200 utility bills here, but it'd be nice if they did.
Yeah. Must be water.
Yeah, yeah, so, okay. All right, so we talked about having a meeting next week.
Is there, could we get feedback from, we want to be mindful of all your schedules, but because they're going to be presenting most of that meeting to us, is there a day for the sustainability partners folks next week that gives you enough time to give us the best answers possible?
Connor, Brian, I'm on you guys some of the specking of this because I'll be taking that information to get to Sean.
So can you repeat that? I'm sorry. Everything just cut
What
out.
what day? What day next week would be best for us to be able to come back and present sort of findings? I'm going to need a day with Sean just to kind of run all the different models.
Right.
So,
I mean-
but before I do that, I'll need to get input from y'all.
Keep in mind, just because this is a public meeting, we'll have to give ample notice. So I would say Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at the earliest.
Mhm. Friday won't work for me.
So Wednesday, Thursday,
We have a PNC meeting here on Thursday evening.
okay?
On the 14th?
No, the
No.
That's this
13th,
week, yeah, that's
This
this
week.
week. Never
Yeah,
mind.
next week is what we're talking about.
next week.
So yeah, the 13th, the 12th would be best for me personally. The 13th I will make work. The 14th will be a real challenge.
Did you guys gather all that?
I
Yeah.
guess let's just go ahead and put it on the 12th, and we will give it the old college try. So
Okay, and do we have room on is it available? Okay. Okay,
And Wednesday at 5:30?
yeah. And so to just be another meeting where our goal is to hear the recommendations and then, we'll make it a goal we may need a second meeting to fully decide, but I'd like to see us come out of that meeting if we can. Of at least the mix of what are we gonna do, the 3-3 or all threes or 3-2 or?
Well, and getting closer to generating a recommendation to pass to council that this is the vendor that we have gone through with sustainability partners and start getting towards contracts and paperwork, because again, end of the month is our goal here. I know that's a tight timeline and I will continue to apologize for working you folks over regularly for this, but if we're gonna get housing this year, it's all down to these next few weeks of meetings, I think. Any disagreement there?
No.
When is the next council meeting?
Next week,
11th, next Tuesday,
Oh, okay, and then the 25th
and the 25th.
correct.
and then the 8th.
Ryan, are you good with all four, betting all four, or just, do we need to get down to 3?
I will. I'll reach out to them just to get some general pricing and availability. I think a couple qualifying questions and a phone call with me the next day or two will really allow us to get down to it. We're pretty comfortable right now that both Clayton and Champion can deliver units this year in the general style and spec that the village is seeking. I would be remiss to say that I'm confident in the other two. One is just, it's a different kind of unit. It's a lot more expensive, and they have a lot of design engineering that they have to do in order to even manufacture them. And I'll reserve comment on JW Homes down in Roswell. Just, I haven't spoken with them in that level of detail at this point.
Okay.
And Ryan specifically, just one issue that I've heard, can be an issue. Specifically, I heard this from a customer that was trying to buy a Champion home, and it's possible that it could with Clayton as well. But when you're discussing these in the timeframes, I would assume that we'd have some kind of contract that they would deliver on those dates. They've been known to take existing inventory and sell it to people that are willing to pay more for products that are built. So they may be building them for us, but if someone comes in and says they'll pay double for them, they're known to sell them in that way.
Yeah, Mayor, that's a great question. So the way that we would contract with either of the manufacturers, specific deadlines would be defined in that, and they'd have to have a performance bond associated with it. And I can let Connor kind of go into the details of all the different legal things that we put in place to ensure that. But they're really on the hook once they sign up on that. So
no, I assumed as much. Like I said, I'd heard some stories of locals here that have tried to buy some Champion homes, and they were told one thing and then kept getting undersold. So salesman.
Yeah. That's great info to back up what Ryan said. Yeah. In the meetings coming up, if necessary, I can give, detail into what we put in there, at least high level details, but that's something that I'll discuss that with our crew, because that's the first I've heard of that. So thank you for bringing it up. I want to make sure we nip that in the bud right now.
Okay. All right, well, I appreciate it. So our next meeting, we're going to review recommendations from sustainability, and then potentially land on at least the mix of which direction we're going to go, and potentially a couple of models.
So we will discuss the housing mix and potentially vote.
Yeah.
And I would keep these as committee meetings. I don't know that you'll get there next week, but if you did get to where you wanted to vote to send a report forward, at least that it's a meeting and not a work session.
Right.
And then we're ahead.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right, sounds good.
See you all next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. And we'll